Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Horse Geeks podcast, where we look at horses and riders from the inside out. I'm Kirsten Nelson, professional horse trainer, and Deb Romero, certified Alexander Technique instructor, is once again here with us. Woo woo, Deb's in the house.
Yay.
So thanks for joining us. And today, the topic is going to be recognizing a stress response. Like, that's hard, right? But recognizing it
I
in our
don't know.
so interestingly, it's kind of a technical term. So, in other words, what a stress response means specifically is that the person or the horse's sympathetic nervous system is dominant, taking over all the autonomic functions, and or the fight flight nervous system is kicked in gear and is taking things over. And so that's technically what a stress response means. Compared to the other technical term is a relaxation response, which means the parasympathetic portion of the autonomic nervous system is dominant, or the nervous system is in what we call cohesion, which means still technically dominant in the rest and digest portion of the nervous system, but we sweat because it's hot, but we don't have to sweat. Like we sweat because we're scared if it's not hot, but if we're not scared, we still can sweat because it is hot. And so last time we talked about like cooling horses down and how to recognize physical stress when we're working horses in the heat, especially non-sweaters. And basically
Yeah.
what it is a stress response, whatever the reason. So
Mm.
a stress response can be triggered through fear or emotions that don't feel very good to us. A stress response can be triggered by thoughts. That list of things we have to get
Mm.
done can trigger
Blech.
a stress response. And physical exertion can shift from
Right.
beneficial into stressful and become a stress response. And that's why I know you grew up hearing it and I grew up hearing it, no pain, no gain. And it's like we just don't hear
Oh
that
my gosh.
anymore, right? Because
Oh,
that
I
was
hear
dumb.
things like push through it. I don't hear the no pain, no gain, but push through it. What was one I heard lately? Um, you need to get over it.
You need to drop that story. Yeah. Get her
You need to
done.
get over it. It's
Yeah.
like,
So I guess
okay,
you still
doesn't
hear
help
that.
when I say to my son, who's a ex-Marine, to get over his post-traumatic stress. It doesn't work that way.
No, it does. It really doesn't work that way for anybody,
It
but
doesn't.
we
No.
see it really not work in an extreme stress response.
Hmm.
Yeah. So stress responses in general, what happens during and it's like this whole complicated chain of events that we describe in the one term called a stress response. But basically, whatever the trigger, the thoughts are going to viscerally affect all the functions of our body, or the emotions are going to affect the thoughts, and the emotions are going to basically create a release of chemicals in the body. So, what we call peptides, neuropeptides, ligands, those are kind of the chemicals that we produce and pump out that are as strong as any prescription drug. Any prescription drug we can think of, the body can also produce. And so, what we categorize as stress hormones is like cortisol, norepinephrine, adrenaline, those kind of peptides, ligands, neuropeptides. So there's a chemical change in the body related to hormones. There's changes in all of the autonomic functions of the body. So when we're in a stress response, the sympathetic fight flight nervous system dominates the nervous system. So what that tells the body to do is direct blood flow to the limbs. So we have the power for fight or flight and pulls blood away from the vital organs, the digestive system, and all of our essential autonomic functions. It is also going to increase heart rate and respiration and blood pressure. And the immune system is temporarily suppressed. So anytime for that period of time that we or our horse are sort of experiencing a stress response, whatever the reason was, all of those same
That's a good point.
physiological changes are taking place. And in a nutshell, that's why doctors tell us, we're too stressed out, or why we hear
That's a
about
big help.
how, stress leads to so many health issues. And so
Right.
the stress response is really describing a physiological, chemical, functional change throughout the entire individual. It's a big deal. And to
Yeah.
walk around going, oh, I'm just stressed all the time, I go, well, then you're kind of taxing your health all the time.
And if you think about saying that to yourself all the time, if you're actually verbalizing it, that
Yeah.
that brings it even more so.
Makes it
You're
more
kind of
real.
owning it.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes it more real. And it always amazes me, and I think it applies to horses because I've seen it happen a couple of times with horses and owners where, the horse will have a stress response or spook, and the owner's like, "Oh, you've seen that before. What's the matter with you?"
Yes. Or why
Uh,
won't you get in
yeah,
that trailer? We've done it 1,000 times.
yeah,
Why won't you get in now?
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You know
So, and
better.
then it always amazes me with people too. Something that stresses me may not stress you at all.
Bingo. Yes.
Yeah, and that being respectful and non-judgmental of a human or horse's acting out response, whatever you want to call it, to what they consider stressful.
Absolutely. That is
You know,
unique to every single individual.
yeah.
Absolutely unique. And like, for example, it might stress me out a lot to look at my bank balance. My horse doesn't care at all, right? It might
Well, and I
stress,
know from
my horse
working
gets
with you
really
and you
stressed
coming up
out.
here and
Sorry,
yeah,
go ahead.
but
Or,
I know just working with you and you come up here and do clinics, I am so time oriented.
yes,
I stress over your time.
yes. Yeah. And
And
I
you're
go,
like, yeah, no, it's no big deal.
horses don't care. Horses don't care that
Horses don't care.
we're on a schedule. Horses don't care.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't even care what we look like as long as we don't look
Mhm.
scary. And it's like, but then the horses, I had one horse this morning who just lost her mind because two of the neighbor horses went out on a trailer and one was left behind who was hollering and
Oof.
screaming for his friends, and that just sent her into orbit. And I had to go out there and help her
Mhm.
calm down. And again,
I think that that's a great point. What you just said is help them,
yeah,
not to pass
instead of
judgment on them, but have some skill set on helping the horse cope and realize that. And same thing with people
I was going to say, or your friend. Yes.
or your friend. All of those skills are fantastic.
Yeah. And I think when we start to recognize a stress response for what it is, I think we also quit pointing the finger and saying that horse has a bad personality, or
Mm,
that horse is naughty, or that horse is bad. And I go, that horse is scared. or that horse is uncomfortable, or that horse is just getting triggered by something. And I have no idea. Most of the horses I work with, I haven't worked with them their whole life. I have no idea what happened in the past. But
Right.
there can be these random triggers or fears, and I don't even have to know why. What's important to me is if my friend, whether it's a horse or a human, is obviously having a stress response, I can help or I can make
Mhm.
it worse.
That's true. Yeah.
And
I've
some people,
seen some people that want to be left alone, and you maybe just create a space, for them to be in, and consequent. I was working with a horse this morning that trailered in, and he had a small corral we could put him in, and he was fine until we put him in that corral. Then he lost it.
yeah,
As soon as I took him back out and just stood with him, he was fine.
yeah. And we got no
So
idea
he
why.
needed that support. Yeah, he needed that support of me being right there, and not, he wasn't capable of controlling himself, even in a very small pen with me just standing outside. He wanted that connection.
Exactly. Exactly. And that
Yeah.
was
So
his,
figuring out,
well, and just by reading that horse's energy, body language, what behavior is this horse choosing to do? What actions is this horse choosing to do? All of that is communication. I go, it's not good or bad.
right,
It's just showing us that this horse, for whatever reason, is either having a stress response or is having a relaxation response. And I go, but the
right,
inside, and this is our sort of inside out podcast, the difference between just leaving them alone, not helping, maybe they figure their way through the stress response, maybe they don't, but the longer it goes on, the more it compromises health. And
that's a good point. And yeah,
the relaxation response is what supports the healthiest possible function of that person or horse. So to me,
and I,
it's part
yeah,
of rehab. I go, it became a very important
uh,
part of rehab because I can't keep fighting the chemical changes, the blood flow, the respiration, the heart rate, whether the digestion is functioning compromised or ideally, whether the immune system is being suppressed. Those are all even out of our own control within our own bodies. But what we can do
right,
is when we have a stress response, we can take our eyes off of it. We don't have to make it an all the time state. We can seek out ways that help us feel calmer, quieter, and find a relaxation response, right? Whatever that means. Some people go for walks, some people meditate, some people do exercise. It doesn't matter. But what works for us as individuals, just like that horse, there was a big difference between putting him in that little pen alone or just having him stand next to you, was the difference between a healthy or a health supportive use of the body or a health depleting use of the body. And our only choice
right.
as the other is, do we help or not help? Do we figure out what that person or horse needs to get through that stress response and restore the rest and digest nervous system? I mean, that's a wild card. There's no right or wrong way to do it.
I think that's a really good point, and it's what I tell people when I'm working with them with the Alexander work, is that I'm not here to fix you. I am here to give you some tools to put in your tool belt to try when you get stuck, whether it's a stressor, body, mind, whatever, that, oh, well, we could try this. Oh, we could try this. We could try this. but I think it's also important to acknowledge that there's a stressor going on and accept it, especially when it's coming from your horse. It don't take it personal.
It's not
It
personal.
it has, you know,
Yeah,
it's not personal to them. It's like this horse this morning was obviously telling me with his behavior, I don't feel comfortable in my own skin over here.
right, right.
Yeah. So
And
I thought, okay, let's take him out.
what we tend to do, like if I took that scenario and things I've seen 1,000 times in that exact scenario, is that horse is being bad. So we label it
Mm,
first, right? Then we
mm-hmm.
look to punish or discourage bad behavior. So as soon as we label it as
Right.
bad, our role becomes discouragement, punishment. And I go, that's a totally different choo-choo train of thought than recognizing
Mm,
it as a stress response. And can we help that individual feel safer, calmer, more relaxed by kind of experimenting? Like with a horse, they can't tell us verbally what they need, but you nailed it
right.
through the energy, the body language, the behavioral choices. They're telling us, I'm relaxed, I'm stressed. And it's kind of that simple.
Mhm.
And we're not pandering because some people will say, oh, you're just pandering to that horse. And I go,
Uh,
the learning
really?
begins like learning under pressure, learning under stress really increases the stress response. When we learn best, if we want to expedite learning new skills, we start and work while we're in a relaxation response because a different part of
Yeah.
our brain is stimulated. Different hormones are released, a totally different use of the body. The entire nervous system is more open and receptive to new information and to integrate it. In a stress response, it's a defensive strategy for the body used for survival.
And
So,
I've seen some horses. I worked with a horse yesterday that you wouldn't think by looking at her that she was stressed, but she was an introvert. So
yes.
just a little bit of the raise of the head and a little bit of the white of the eyes, even though she was doing what she was being asked to do,
Hmm.
she was definitely not relaxed.
Yeah. And that's where a lot of condition response training, obedience training, what we think of as
Mm.
horse training, we almost create a blind spot in the person because,
Ah,
and we
you're right,
literally, like,
right.
we all know that sometimes we can miss things that are right in front of our face, right? We all know that's possible. And what
Especially if it's emotional or like your a relationship issue. You know,
sometimes, yeah,
we take things way too seriously with our horses.
as a reflection of our skills. And so,
Hmm.
kind of recognizing, looking past, like what you did, you looked past the behavior. So instead of labeling the behavior as good or bad, you looked
Mm,
past it and said, wow, that behavior is communicating something to me. And
hmm.
essentially, it's either we could boil it down to stress or relaxation responses because it's going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of one of those two. And all of our problems that we have with our horses live in the fact that we're not recognizing stress responses in our horse. And so we're looking at what the
Much
horse,
before the blow up. Yeah, we're not noticing the little tiny thing way back there that started,
that's
like
like
this
a
introverted mare with her head up in her eyes. It's
yeah,
like, no, she's doing what I asked, but she's stressed about it.
yes. And if we miss
Yeah.
the kind of mild to moderate versions, just like with people, I go, we sort of keep a lid on it. And then one little,
Mm.
straw on the camel's back, suddenly we explode. And
Hmm.
horses are no different. If you have this kind of undercurrent of ongoing chronic stress, or you're not addressing, the more subtle signs. We missed it. We didn't pay attention because we were so busy trying to achieve this task or do this maneuver or get our horse in this frame or get this test done or do that pattern or get over that jump, whatever, right? We're so focused. You call it in Alexander work in gaining, which means we got to get that thing done,
Right.
right?
Got to get the
And
task done.
got to get the task done. And so we do it however we figure out how to do it. And I love like that whole idea you always talk about of just pausing long enough to go, what's motivating whatever that person or horse is doing? What's driving that? And then whether we have words with people or we don't have words, we communicate non-verbally with horses, we're still communicating. A large part of the communication is the energy, right? The body
Right.
language, the direction of movement, the choices of behavior, right? The choices of, I'm out of here or I'm going to run you over. Those are two different directions, right? And so when we look at what we call behavior or what we call naughty behavior or resistance, if we just go, what if our horse is trying to communicate something to us? Maybe our horse is under stress. Our horse being under stress makes no sense to me whatsoever, but I'm not my horse,
Right.
right? My horse doesn't get stressed over things I get stressed about, and vice versa. So all I have to do is recognize, oh, that's a stress response. And once I recognize it as a stress response, then I'm going to make different choices than if I just look at the horse doing what I want or not doing what I want, being obedient, not being obedient, right? There's a whole lot more going on at a subtle level beyond that action. And even when we sit here and do these podcasts, it's like the tempo of the voice, the tone of voice, the fluctuations of energy up and down through the voice. I go, all of that
Right.
is part of what's communicating meaning or interest in the conversation.
I don't think people realize how much the way they're being at that moment affects their horse.
Oh, yeah, because what you see all the time is the horse gets under stress. That can trigger fear in a rider or anger or embarrassment or whatever. The horse being under stress very often triggers stress in the human, right? And it can work also the other way around. The stress of the human, our
Right.
horses are
I
reading a
agree.
mile away. And they're like, thanks, but no thanks. I don't think I want to go to the arena today with you. And then we get mad because they're hard to
And that's
catch. Yeah.
exactly. And if we bring thoughts to the table of past experiences or future things that could happen, the horse reads that.
Yeah. And the
You know, that
most
they're
dangerous situations, which is why our insurance rates are so high in the horse business, is because a horse having a stress response is going to be tapping into the older part of the brain. They're going to be acting unconsciously according to instincts, and they have prey animal instincts. The human having the same stress response is also working out of the older part of the brain, the limbic system, and is also going to be acting on instincts, but it's predatory instincts. And so
and that's
let the games begin. Let the clash, it's like here, open the Coliseum. Here it comes. It's the
and
fight
that's
between
yep.
predator and prey.
And that's what my work is all about is interrupting, putting that pause in. I just took a workshop from Mio Morales. He's an Alexander teacher, and he said the practice is in the stop.
Oh
So I
yeah, because
thought
that
that
is so hard. Yeah.
the practice is in the stop, the pause, the interrupt the thought, behavior, before it comes out of your mouth, comes out of your body, or whatever.
And the reason that is so hard to do is once we as humans are in the middle of a stress response, we're functioning on autopilot.
Mhm.
There's very little information kind of getting from the more advanced part of the brain, the frontal cortex, back there to the old lizard part of the brain, the limbic system. And that's where I go, if I'm helping someone, the main help I can do is start to interrupt the stress response,
Mhm.
right? Gently, firmly, in some crazy way, some kind way, it doesn't matter. But sort of just breaking that stress response for a second kind of lets the mind adjust
Right.
and see. But once we're in the stress response, the problem of finding that moment on our own is because every system in our body is screaming, survive, fight, flight, do something, don't be passive, or we freeze. But
Well, that's true.
the freeze is like a coiling up of the energy, ready to spring into action, right? And those descriptions of stress responses of fight and flight are descriptions of two different strategies of survival. There's also freezing, deer in the headlights, fawning, which is sort of the placating, it can turn into passive aggressive, right? The fawning. And then there's that dorsal ventral state of shutdown, that deep introversion. And so those are like the five universal terms for different varieties of stress responses. But they're all
And the
stress
horses have
responses.
that too. I mean, the
Same
horses
for the
can,
horses.
yeah, right.
Absolutely.
Not just people. Horses do the same thing.
People, horses, chickens, cats, dogs, bunnies, yeah,
I don't know about
lions.
reptiles, but
Reptiles live there, right? That's why they can be so dangerous, is because that is, I don't know if they have a frontal cortex portion of the brain.
to think, yeah.
So the frontal cortex portion of the brain, the more advanced portion, is what humans have that is the largest proportionally to all mammals, all species. What the frontal cortex portion of the brain allows us to do are those card sorting techniques. And so, or card sorting tests, where basically that part of our brain is where we assign meaning to things. It's where we have the capacity of imagination and the capacity of choice. And so horses have that same structure, but it's just smaller.
Mm.
So while horses have great memories, they really don't have the capacity or a large capacity for imagination or for choice. And they make choices very much in present time. So they
That's the
go,
key.
and that's what they have to teach us. That's why we have to
Oh,
learn to
totally
stay
agree.
present.
Totally agree.
Because horses are constantly, you could think of them going around the world going, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. So to me, if I see a relaxation response in my horse, that's a yes. That's the horse saying, yep, I'll do that with you. I'll do that for you. I can handle that. That's no big deal. Let's do it.
So maybe we should throw out there what we consider some relaxation responses and some stress responses so people can be looking for them.
I keep it pretty simple. I go, when we're in a relaxation response, and even the sort of colloquial term, rest and digest nervous system. How do you feel when you're resting and when you're digesting? So if we go, what's the energy like? I go, I use the word calm.
Calm, yeah. Peaceful, at ease,
Yeah, that energy is easy for us to recognize across species
deep
in
breaths, normal
ourselves.
heart rate, all of that.
Yeah, so I go, the energy is calm, right? If we eat in a hurry, we can eat in a stress response. But if we really think about enjoying eating or the rest and digest function of the body, to me, that always is associated with some degree of calm energy, right? Where the fight and flight, the difference there in a stress response is you're going to have, or maybe I should say, calmness or steady energy. And then in a
Hmm.
stress response, I see big fluctuations of energy. And I go, it could be anxiety, it could be tension, it could be aggression, it could be what we call fear or startle response. It could be a shutting down, a freezing, an inaction, or a placating. Like it could be any of those things.
Could it be
So,
something like pain?
well, that could be the reason for the stress response.
Right.
But the stress response itself, we don't always know the reason, but we can recognize the signs of it. So the first sign is what's the energy? What's the most prevalent, obvious energy? And even when we walk through the grocery store, or what we call somebody comes in a room and they have a lot of presence, we're just recognizing that energy, right? Or even,
I feel it as people, I try to teach people you can take up your own space, stay, but sometimes when I walk into a room, there's a person in there that's maybe taking up the entire room.
mhm,
Yeah, with big energy, you
yeah,
know,
maybe too much,
too much.
right?
Or there could be the person that's not even taking up the energy in their own skin.
And we use actually quite accurate descriptions when it comes to how we experience energy
Mm.
because we look at someone as being weighed down.
Oh,
They
good
look weighed
language.
down, or that person is really bubbly, right? Or we think heavy thoughts. I even changed my tone of voice when I
Yeah,
said
I
that,
heard
right?
that.
And so it's like, or bubbly, or happy, or joyful, right? It's like all of those nonverbal parts we
Mhm.
already recognize, and we actually use descriptions that sort of describe it kinesthetically or viscerally, because that's our
Right.
experience. Even though energy is invisible, I go, yeah, so is humidity, but look at my hair, right? So,
Yeah.
so the energy is what we can't quite maybe put our finger on it, but we describe it all the time, right? So we can see when somebody is in a state of calmness, or we might say that person's really unflappable, right?
Stoic,
Or steady, or
steady,
that's a
or and
steady Eddie.
yeah, and noticing those qualities in our horses. What do they look like?
Yeah. So energy to me is the first thing I look at to assess, is my horse or this person I'm maybe not even talking to having a stress response or a relaxation response? What's the energy like? Then I'm going to look at body language because,
Hmm.
again, that's kind of universal. Like between people, we can recognize somebody frowning or smiling in any country, even if we don't speak the language,
Right.
right? And horses, we have to develop a little bit of an eye because they have very different facial muscles. And I think their body language expressions can be more subtle than what we're
Oh, I
used
agree.
to.
I think that's what we're missing, most of us, is not picking up on it a lot sooner than the explosion or the spook or whatever.
Yeah. And a lot of times working with clients, I'll go, what is your horse's body language conveying to you?
Hmm.
And at first they'll tell me, well, he's just standing still. And I go, not what he's doing. What's the body language telling us? Right.
Exactly.
And over time, horse people, you can look at the body language and put words in the horse's mouth, and everybody recognizes that's exactly what that horse is thinking and feeling, right? That's just developing our eye for horse body language. So, like
Right.
for us, if we widen our eyes in surprise, like all these facial muscles change and it's obvious. But when a horse does it, it's just a little bit of the eyes showing white around the pupil. And so it might be more subtle, but it's the exact same body language.
Right. Yeah.
Or a scared horse will sort of suck up the lower lip.
Yeah. The wrinkles.
Hmm. And it's just
Yep.
like us sort of,
Pucker up.
oh my God. Yeah, everything puckers up. Yeah,
Yeah.
or how they use the ears. Like
Oh,
that's peop
huge.
huge. The ears really, the ears and the eyes to me, ears, eyes, mouth, that's where I kind of just pick up the body language the fastest because they change very quickly, but you start to see what the ears look like during surprise, or I'm happy to see you, or get the heck away from me,
Yep.
or, I'm going to come bite you because I can. Like all of those are a little bit different expressions of body language. So, kind of just observing our horse,
Oh,
like
I
looking,
so agree.
looking past the behavior. When I actually sit there and kind of poke people a little bit, everybody nails it. I've not met one person who cannot read the body language of a horse, but my guidance to that person to wake that up in them is often saying not what they're doing, right? What do you think the body language is
Because
telling
I've
you?
seen horses that, like you said, that were standing still. Their
Hmm.
eyeballs are about to pop out of their head.
Yes.
They're upside down, they're snorting, their heads up, their backs dropped, and that's like, whoa, I don't want to be around that.
Or something I see all the time is grooming horses, right? Some horses love it and it creates a relaxation response. Some horses hate it and it is a stress response the entire time. And the body language and the energy tell me the difference. And I go, just because maybe we have to groom the horse to keep them healthy, we can't assume every horse loves being touched or groomed or snuggled or kissed. And I go, they kind of
Yeah,
tell
I
you,
have one, my finer things. If you kiss her, you got teeth.
yeah, you might lose part of your nose.
Yeah, that's not a good idea. She's cute, but no.
Yeah, there'll be no kissing.
No
Yes.
kissing her. No, no, no.
And so it's not that what we did was right or wrong or good or bad. It's like how our horse takes it is not up to us. And it's
Hmm.
not good or bad or right or wrong. It's just how they respond.
Right. Or that even because they're so kinesthetic, their level of sense of touch is much more highlighted than ours. So maybe we need to back off and, not curry so fast with that. Oh, I've got to hurry up and get him groomed so I can get the saddle on. That whole energy around, they don't want that energy around them.
No, because even if we go as people and get a massage, I hate getting massages because I never find somebody who I really relax with the way
Mhm.
they're giving me a massage. I go, it's either too light and it creeps me out,
Yeah.
or it's too heavy, right? It's too heavy and it's not comfortable.
Right.
And I go, most massages I don't enjoy. It's not pleasant. No, thank you. Don't give me a gift certificate, right?
Good to know.
Good to know. Do not. Do not.
Now, see,
Because
I was a
you're
body worker forever, but I would rather at this point have an Alexander lesson than a massage.
I would too. But
Yeah.
you used to do medical massage and you
Hmm.
are the only person I will have massage me. I go because you have a sensitivity. I don't even have to tell you verbally. And this is how we interact with horses. It's the
This is
same way.
important. The sensitivity is critical.
It's very important because
Yeah.
whatever energy or body language that I'm giving back to you unconsciously, and I'm not taking any action, I'm laying face down on a table, and you can tell how my body language and energy or my body itself
Hmm.
viscerally is responding to anything you do, and you adjust. You
Hmm.
adjust very quickly, sort of going, it's kind of like, how do I find the right words?
It's that sensitivity of not
Mhm.
thinking that I always have the right answer of the level of sensitivity that that creature, whatever horse person I'm touching, it's not about me.
Exactly. And that's what I have to teach riders a lot
Hmm.
is I go, just because you like a nice firm massage doesn't mean your
Hmm.
horse does.
Exactly.
Or just because you like a delicate light touch doesn't mean your horse does.
Yeah.
And so how we use our rein contact, how we use our muscles when we ride, how we interact with our horse on the ground, or how we handle them while we're picking up the feet, grooming, putting them in a trailer, all of those basics, tacking up.
Hmm.
That interaction is a constant conversation, at least from our horse's side. We
Yeah.
may we may be off with the butterflies, but our horse is paying attention.
Well,
And
and I don't know about you, but the more any time that I've gotten hurt, it's when I wasn't being present with and on the page. I was not fully there.
yeah,
That's when I get hurt.
yep.
It's when
No,
I
and
am not present.
my worst injuries with horses have been while I was on the ground.
Yeah, me too.
I go because I pay more attention when I ride.
Maybe
And
that's it.
I,
Yeah.
I maybe I don't pay enough attention or I take
Mm,
things for granted when I'm on the ground.
that's a good point. And especially those of us that have horses at home and we're by ourselves, being present's kind of important.
Kind of important. Yeah, because you never know when something that has nothing to do with you can create a stress response in a horse, in your
Right.
horse, in the horse you deal with every day. That doesn't mean in the next 5 minutes something could happen that the horse has a stress response to,
Hmm.
right? And so that's part of how horses teach us to really stay in the moment and be present
Mm.
and to tune into the nonverbal parts of conversation like energy and body language. I go for a horse, and I tell people this all the time. The action the horse takes, what the horse actually does, is the word, just like you and I are speaking words, but we're still changing our energy, our tone, our body language while we're speaking words, which is part of what give the words meaning.
Right.
So if we want to understand our horse's behavior, it has nothing to do with the action.
Right.
It has to do with the energy and the body language that's coupled with the action that gives it meaning,
Hmm.
right? And I go, if we just go like on a gross level, the horse is either telling you yes with a relaxation response, or the horse is telling us no with a stress response. So if we get a
Yeah.
no, our instinct, our human instinct, is to leverage,
Oh.
control,
Hmm.
make them do it, punish, gain obedience, right? If we just sort of put those things in a shoebox in the back of the closet and we reach for something new and we go, that's a stress response. How do I help my horse shift from a stress response to a relaxation response and also get this thing done?
Wow. Yeah. Because that get that thing done might have to wait.
It might take more time.
Yeah. It might keep
And
it
I go, but
that back burner thing.
like trailer loading, which I have a couple of videos on YouTube under the Wexford Training Barn, where I've been working on trailer loading with the chestnut thoroughbred mare, rarely wrong. And trailer loading was a big issue for her, and standing still was a big issue for her.
Mm.
And I showed some of the progression from where we started and where we just sat there. I sat in the back of the trailer, got her to stand there at halt until her relaxation response near the trailer was so deep that she dropped her head below her withers. She relaxed. She went into grazing posture. She yawned, she licked, she chewed, she peed, she did all kinds of things, but she went into a deep state of relaxation that I recognized through energy, body language, and behavioral choices. And once she could do that consistently, getting in the trailer was no longer a big deal.
Right.
And I think I even said on the video, there's a gazillion trainers out there that will show you how to put a stressed out horse into a trailer. And some horses get better at avoiding it than people are smart enough to get them in. And
True.
so, and other horses just get so scared that you're risking an injury or an accident. So we go buy head bumpers and we wrap their legs and put huge shipping boots on them. But it's like if they just
Sorry.
like that's the
I
human
had a horse
answer.
shipped to me with these huge bungalow type wraps, and I'm like, what is that?
Oh no, the full outfit is the cotton, the earplugs,
Oh my gosh.
the ear covers, the head bumper, the shipping boots, and maybe a fly sheet, fly mask, blanket of some sort. I go, that's just like the whole kit, and maybe even wrapped under the shipping boots. But I go,
I did my big mare that's 17 some hands. I used to wrap her tail because she would sit on the back bumper pad and rub her tail raw. So,
oh
I
yeah, I
mean,
forgot the tail guard.
the tail guard.
But
But
I go,
that,
when
even
you're
going to
trying,
Florida, I never wrapped my horses when I would come down to Florida.
no, and if you're trying to put a stressed out horse in a trailer and go somewhere, then just buy a lot of bubble wrap and some duct tape because there's a million things that could go wrong. And I go, but if the horse starts to have a relaxation response with the trailer, it's not that bad things can't happen or
Right.
accidents won't happen, but you're sort of increasing your odds of safety. You're
Yeah.
decreasing the odds that something horrible could go wrong. If
Right.
we're loading horses and trailering them while they're having a stress response, we're decreasing safety and increasing the odds of an accident. That's just how it's going to kind of work. And so I go, trailer loading is easy to me. Make it so boring that the horse has a relaxation response. And then they get in, and then they not only get in that day or that from that regular training, if it takes a while, but it's like even if I don't trailer load them for a while, I can open the trailer and they go in.
Yeah, we talked about that last week that the two young horses I have here, their stress response is very high to trailers, where my two that I've been working with forever, it's, throw the rope over and boom, in they go, and there is absolutely no stress for them
Yeah,
to get in
and
the trailer.
your big mare Callie is a great example.
That's true.
So she was a perpetual trailer loading issue. And this is an example I use a lot for people because it's not a matter of getting the horse physically in the trailer X number
Mm-mm.
of times.
It
That's how
doesn't, that doesn't matter.
most people think of it that way. So
Right.
they go, I just need 100 plus one times in the trailer, and then my horse will begin to relax. And I go, those 101 times under stress can actually make the problem 10 times worse
Mhm.
rather than any better at all. And your horse Callie was a great example. So
Yeah,
until
and she
you
wouldn't get in with treats. That never worked.
treats don't work during a stress response.
Right?
Treats only motivate during a relaxation response. I go, so when a horse is in stress mode, food is not top of the hierarchy.
Exactly.
Fight, flight, defend the self. That's the top of the list that day. So, especially if a horse won't take a treat to get in the trailer, even if it's not obvious, I know that horse is having a stress response.
Yeah. And that's how subtle it can be. I mean,
Hmm.
it's that, and that's where the true work can be done. We can actually make improvement there. If
Yes.
we just let go of, I have to get him in the trailer, as an example, or I
Yeah.
have to get him past that blowing bag, or
Right. Right. Or on
whatever.
that trail or in that show ring or whatever.
Hmm.
Yeah. Or I have to get the canter. It's like all of
Oh,
those things. It depends on, and we've talked about this before, I think, when we talked about how tasks don't teach,
oh, exactly right.
because it depends on how you do the task. So anything that we're achieving, but we're achieving it during a stress response, either on our part, our horse's part, or both, That's the training that doesn't stick with time off.
Exactly. It's the same thing. They've done studies on kids and learning.
Hmm.
If they're having a stress response, they're not learning.
Yeah, because it literally, the nervous system really feeds or loops in and out of, I should say, either the older instinctual part of the brain for survival or the newer part of the brain for cognition and learning and choice and imagination. And what's so interesting, my sister, who is a um, psychologist, when she was going through school, we were having this discussion, and she said there's about 1 billion different research papers on how even the human brain, in the human brain, that limbic portion that drives our instinctual nature and survival, and the frontal cortex, which is the more advanced intelligence, supposedly, those two parts of the brain can't really light up or fire simultaneously. So there's a little bit of a literal translation when we say we can't think when we're afraid, right? And same
Yeah,
with our horse. Our horse can't think, can't really
right.
learn when that stress response is kind of driving that tugboat.
And that's 1,000-pound tugboat.
Yeah, so all this training time we put in, thinking we're achieving 1 million tasks and we're getting there and we're getting this maneuver done and that maneuver done, but we're doing it with a lot of excitement or tension or anxiety and having to use a lot of leverage and
Mm,
control. I go, as soon as that horse gets a week or two off, all the training falls off. None of it sticks.
that's true. That
And I
is
go,
true.
if I make sure that my horse is essentially in a relaxation response while we're learning to do any task. It doesn't matter what task. While we're learning to come in and get dinner, right? Or go out in the morning. It's like during any of those tasks, if I take the time to help that horse shift from a stress response to a relaxation response, even a little bit, then that learning becomes integrated and I no longer have to repeat
Mhm.
that particular part of training. And I go, people go, but that's too slow. I don't want to have to slow down. I got things to
Mhm.
do. And I go, well, then deal with it the rest of your life because it's not going to change. So if you're
Yeah,
prepared to do that this way with stress every single time, and you're not prepared to slow down and change how you do it, then just keep doing you. And just know that it's not healthy. You're risking injury and accident. And it may seem faster up front, but once you or your horse get KO'd, everything's going to slow down.
yeah, and it could be something not even it could be, the horse I saw yesterday, it was ulcers. It could
See,
it can
ulcers to me are a symptom
Mhm.
of chronic stress response,
Yes.
maybe low grade. And that's even, I think, what the medical field for people says what ulcers come
That's a good
from is
yeah.
just chronic stress.
Or how we deal with our outside world, yeah.
Yeah. And that's actually this month what I did the newsletter about was the power of choice that we do have as humans, our horses don't have, is that we
Mhm.
can recognize when we're in a stress response and start to make different choices in order, whatever that means. Chocolate cake, Ben and Jerry's. We got to find something. A walk in the woods, something healthy, maybe something not healthy. But what we're searching for is a way to get out of that stress response and back into a relaxation response. That's the healthiest thing we can do, and there's many different ways to do it. And when we look at our horses being not that different from us,
Right.
ulcers in horses, a lot of GI issues, even metabolic issues. I go, all of those can be the result of just either huge spikes of high stress or low grade chronic stress. Excuse
Yeah.
me. Even the non-sweating we talked about last time, there's two reasons that you go into anhydrosis. One can be a an event of high heat stress that either lasted too long or the temperatures were way too high and the body quit sweating. That's anhydrosis, right? That can happen to horses or people just because of outside temperatures. But the
Right.
other reason, like in Florida, we call them temporary non-sweaters
Hmm.
and genetic non-sweaters. And the ones that never overcome the non-sweating, they never restore their ability to sweat. Um, it's kind of a metabolic issue. And really, nobody knows the full reason why or how to turn it around. But some horses, it just becomes permanent, and other horses, it can be temporary. But it is related, like ulcers, to
Hmm.
stress.
Yeah.
So for me, it's about the health of the horse or the health of myself that I go, okay, maybe I got to turn the news off, or maybe go to a different grocery store, or maybe go at a different time. But I kind of look for little ways that I can reduce stress in my life, knowing that it's better for me overall and better
Or
for my
or
horse.
even to, are we recognizing that we might be putting ourselves there?
Yeah, just because
Yeah.
we do it so often.
We, if we live in that high excitement mode, do all the time, yeah, that can,
Yeah,
not be healthy.
I quit going to horse shows because so many horse shows, what I see is a whole lot of horses in
Stressed
stress.
out.
Hmm.
Yeah,
And
I
it
agree.
breaks my heart. It just
Me too.
bothers me. And I
Yeah,
go,
I don't go anymore either.
but it's so common that it's
That's
now
the problem.
it's expected and it's part of normal because it's so prevalent. But I go, just because it's
Mhm.
prevalent doesn't make it right, doesn't make it
Exactly.
healthy, doesn't serve the individual just because everybody else is doing it. Yeah, but
Exactly.
the more you start to recognize stress responses in horses, the you just go, yeah, I don't want to be there. It doesn't feel good to me to be there. It bothers
No,
me.
I agree.
Yeah. All right, we better wrap it up. I think we've been rambling for a while. Thanks everybody for joining us. Hopefully that gives you some food for thought that behind the words or behind the behavior, we can read energy, we can read body language, and we can kind of decipher when we or our horse are starting to have a stress response and maybe get things turned around before they escalate into something unsafe. So hope
Yeah.
that helps.
Yes.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, everybody.
We look
Bye.
forward to seeing you next time. Bye.